So the Yoru rework is finally here, and there were quite a few changes made to him. Pretty much every single one of his abilities besides his flash has been changed, so as one would expect, a lot of players are wondering how good he actually is now. Well, lucky for you, I spent the time to play him, or I guess throw on stream and try him out for myself to hopefully be able to answer this question. After watching other players try him out, playing against him more in ranked, and throwing more myself, I feel as though I have a much better idea of how good he is now, and I'm going to share my thoughts today in this video. I'm going to be talking about what exactly is changing Yoru's kit, a lot of the problems he used to have before the rework, and finally explain whether or not this rework actually fixed those problems. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. To start this video off, let's talk about all the changes made to Yoru starting with his gate crash. He can now hold 2 charges instead of 1 and has to purchase the second one for 200 credits. It also recharges if he's able to get 2 kills, similar to how it worked a long time ago. He can also now fake TP by looking at his tether and pressing F, playing the same audio and show the same visuals as a regular teleport. There were also a lot of other minor changes like how far you can hear it from, how fast he teleports, and how fast the beacon travels. Next ability we need to talk about is his fake out, which I don't want to say I called it, but my Why Nobody Plays video is right here, so you can take a look for yourself if you haven't watched it already. But bragging aside, Yoru now only has 1 charge of his footsteps instead of 2, but to make up for it, it looks like we can't be calling him Yoru footsteps anymore. Because now Fake Out is a full-blown shadow clone that's a full running version of him with 150 HP, and upon getting shot, the shadow clone turns towards the enemy that shot it and explodes, blinding enemies in a cone. And this blind is probably one of the longest in the game. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but this does not last as long as a regular Yoru flash. It's a lot closer to like a breach or sky flash in terms of its length. You can also still use it like the old footsteps to set off util like Cypher Chips or KG bots, and you still have the option to put him down somewhere and activate him later. Finally, there are a few changes to his ultimate, and some of these seem a little bit outrageous when you first hear him. The duration was increased from 8 to 10 seconds. Yoru also can't be seen by any enemies, but enemies can now hear his footstep if he's within 15 meters of them. And Yoru is now able to cast all of his utility while in his ultimate, including his flash. One thing I also did want to mention is that if Yoru has line of sight with you while in his ult, you will see that blue aura that used to show up when he was close to you. And this is regardless of how far away he is from you. He can be across the map and the aura can still show as long as there's nothing blocking the LOS. I'm pretty sure this is how it probably worked before, but because his vision was impaired, we wouldn't see it until he was close. Maybe this is how Riot intended it to work, but it could honestly be a bug since they probably changed his vision without changing how the aura works. Either way, just thought I'd mention it. And that's pretty much it for all of the Yoru rework changes. Now it's time to talk about what Yoru's biggest issues were before to get a better idea of how effective the rework was. Well, for starters, Yoru's biggest issue in my opinion was the fact that not many of his abilities really had any inherent value. Other than his flash, the rest of his abilities required the player to be very creative to outsmart the other players in the lobby. Besides a couple of interactions with certain util, his footsteps didn't really do anything if you didn't know how to use them, and his gate crash was pretty much never used in lower elos besides for throwing. This made Yoru feel pretty much useless when piloted by someone who didn't know how to take advantage of the unique tools in his kit. And unfortunately for Yoru, that was about 99% of the player base. Compared to other agents like Phoenix or Reyna who had much easier to use kits, with Phoenix's Molly that could also heal him, or Reyna who only needs to press one of 2 buttons to either heal or dismiss, he was just a much more difficult agent to get value out of. This gave Yoru a much higher skill floor, making him very inaccessible to a lot of players. Which is not always a bad thing since reaching that skill floor is a part of what makes playing agents like Yoru appealing in the first place. But it means that you're not always going to be looked at fondly by other players when they see you pick him in a comp game. Which kind of leads to the next point, which is that when it comes to Yoru, there's always been other agents that were just better options. Yoru's power level, even when mastered, was never really on par with a lot of the other agents in the game. Why would a team ever want a Yoru when they could instead have a Skye or a KO? He just didn't bring enough to the table. His entire kit pretty much came down to a pretty good flash, a decent ultimate, and a bunch of gimmicks. Where an agent like Skye on the other hand has a better flash that can get info, an AoE heal, a dog, and an ultimate that can do pretty much what Yoru's can except she can shoot while it's going off. Yes, Yoru can flash the back of a site and then TP to make space for his team, but so can a Skye flash combined with the Jet smoking and dashing in. His role was always covered by other agents, and when Jet can also op and has a better ultimate on top of that, there's just no room for Yoru to fit in there. Especially when double duelist comps haven't been in the meta for quite a while now. And these issues when present at the same time are pretty big. He was too hard for lower levels to play, and he just wasn't strong enough to be played at the highest level. Having agents with high skill floors is fine, but if there's no real reward for mastering them, then what's the point? Well, that's where the rework's supposed to come in. So now it's time to talk about how effective the rework actually was by seeing how well it was able to resolve some of his previous issues. And just to quickly recap, the main problems we talked about is how his kit didn't really have any inherent value, making his skill floor really high, and that when mastered, he just didn't bring enough to the table to justify learning how to play him. For the first point, they kinda fixed him and kinda didn't. At the end of the day, Yoru is still pretty damn hard to play, and I don't expect a majority of the player base to be able to play him well. But the rework to his footsteps definitely helped out a lot. Before, if used completely incorrectly, they pretty much wouldn't get any value. Now if you're in a low enough elo, players will usually shoot whatever they see in front of them. So even if you just throw out his decoy very poorly, the enemies will probably shoot it and they will get blinded. The fact that players are actively punished for shooting the clone is huge because it gives the ability real value that wasn't there previously. On top of that, the fact that you can't be seen anymore while in Yoru's ultimate makes using it poorly a lot safer, since it's a lot harder to just follow him around and kill him right when he gets out. Which wasn't ever really a problem for higher level players, since their teammates are more likely to take advantage of the chaos Yoru created, and the fact that they would usually be smart enough to at least put a TP down beforehand in case they need to escape. These factors definitely make Yoru easier to pick up. On to the second problem of whether or not he brings enough to the table when mastered. Well, yeah, his skill ceiling is definitely a lot higher now. I talked about how his clone and lower elos could be used poorly and get value. Now just imagine how good it could be in higher elos when players know what they're doing. We've all seen the clips of players running in front of their clones pretending to be the clone themselves to get free kills, and stuff like that can only really happen when the enemy team is smart enough to fall for it. I've also seen someone combine the clone with his new fake teleport to make it even harder to know if you're looking at a real Yoru or not. And there are just so many more possibilities and opportunities for outplays with these new tools that really do help out the agent. On top of that, the fact that Yoru can use all of his utility while in his ult is actually insane. Yoru can flash enemies when they can't even see him literally from out of nowhere, either setting up kills for himself or his teammates. All these tools put together make Yoru a very real threat in the right hands now, and I'm excited to see what other cool clips come out of the rework. So with that being said, I guess it's time to answer the question now. Is Yoru the new best duelist? Honestly, probably not. For one, Jett is still really strong. Being the best opera in the game and having a really versatile kit means that her spot is kinda solidified. Although Chamber does exist now. There's also Raze, who's arguably the second best duelist in the game. Her utility is just so strong with so much free damage and some of the best mobility in the game, and there's some maps where she's borderline a must pick. But I wouldn't lose hope. This rework did fix a lot of the big issues Yoru had previously. His skill floor is now a bit lower, making him more accessible to lower level players, and his skill ceiling is a lot higher, meaning that he's going to be stronger at higher levels of play. So there's a world where we could see Yoru being played in higher tiers of play, especially on a map like Bind where the TPs allow for some really crazy mind games with him. And honestly, Yoru's probably a top 3 duelist right now, and might even end up being stronger than Jett or Raze depending on the situation. But only time will tell what actually ends up happening. For now, I would say to just enjoy the rework, as Riot did a fantastic job with him. And know that if your goal is to climb up the rank ladder, you can definitely do that with any agent, and Yoru is no exception. Hey guys, hope you all enjoyed this video about the new Yoru rework, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like. I'm super happy to see it's finally here, as I always thought his kit was super cool and unique. Please feel free to let me know what you think of the new rework in the comments. I'd love to hear all your opinions on it. Don't forget that if you want to catch me live, I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/jittersval if you want to check me out. Also, follow me on Twitter if you'd like, I post on there pretty often. And if you want to join my Discord community, there will also be a link in the description for that as well. Finally, don't forget to subscribe for more Valorant related content.